Hey, welcome back to the tutorial. In this tutorial, we will discuss the sprites problem or power bar problem or background image problem for narrow screen 4:3 or a wider screen 16:9. So here is an example. You have this screenshot of a Mugen, right? And the 4:3, they looks normal. They function as they designed. But when you load them into 16:9 stage, you see this Vega, the power bar is gone. I'll explain why. So prior to Mugen 1.0, for example, Wing Mugen or DOS Mugen, Mugen internal coordinate system or internal resolution is only 320 and 240. Okay. X-axis for this Vega and the Iori, they are both syncing. Here is 0 and here is 320. Okay. Here is 0 for the y-axis and here is 240. No matter you set the Mugen to, for example, bigger or small, for then here is always 240. You see the ruler, when I zoom in, the ruler also become bigger. For example, this power bar, the coordinate actually is like 230 and the x is 20, right? When you load these two characters into Mugen 1.0 or 1.1, things changed. Since Mugen 1.0 introduced other resolution, so Mugen did one thing to make the screen ratio to change. It actually cut the image. Yes, it's not adding things beside and make it wider. Actually, it cuts. So I can demonstrate how it cuts things. So you see, this resolution is a 4:3 relationship. You see, 4 divided by 3 is this number, 1.3333, and 320 divided by 240 is also 1.33. That means it is 4:3. So in order to make it 16:9, 240 multiplied by 1.777. So it roughly is 426. 426. You see, what happened is, because the stage is designed for 4:3, it does not necessarily have this kind of thing to display for you. And because these character also can have problem. So if you spend like this, here will be 0, right? So this power bar will be shifted to here if it takes the X value, and this power bar will be shifted to here. Now this create problem, but the real thing Mugen is doing not by adding more information beside. No, it's not adding, it's cutting. It's doing cuts. So in order to make this image 16:9, is using the width divided by 1.7777, and then you got this new height. Yeah, it will be cut. So you want to cut the upper part or cut the lower part. For character, it cuts the lower part. For stage, it cut the upper part. So let's demo. So you see, Mugen actually doing this kind of thing. For player character, lower part is being cut. So now, do you remember where's the power bar? The power bar is here, right? It's around 230, but now 230 is here. and the maximum Y axis is only 180, so the power bar is here and cannot be seen. It's just like here, right? But wait, why the Iori have this power bar? Actually, this Iori is updated by me, and he is having the modern auto adaptive code characters designed for older Mugen. They have no idea to know what the resolution for the screen. There's no way for them to know. So all the coordinates is hard-coded. And here you will have another problem for cutting the image. For example, the stage parts, you know, the character part is cutting the lower side. For stage part, it's cutting the upper side. So if we using Photoshop for demo and we cutting the height to 180, so it will be like this. The image shown will be like this. The character will look too big. So you see the original 4:3. Here have plenty of space. Here have plenty of space. So the character looks normal. But for a 16:9 one, the space here is not so many. Here same. Exactly like here, right? In Mugen 1.0, shrink the character by changing the character's local coordinate. But the problem is, if the character scale down, these kind of things also scale down, and their background image. For example, those background image also being scaled down. And originally, the background image can just cover the whole screen. But if you scale down everything, the background image cannot cover the whole screen. Then you will see this kind of effects. For Mugen 1.0, there's no clear solution, or no solution for that, unless your character is built for this 16:9. But for 1.1, actually there is a solution for that, and that's what I call the true wider screen stages. You don't scale down your character. You scale down the stage by using the stage zoom. It's like this, and you can zoom out. Right. You can zoom out like this, and of course here will automatically have something else to show, so your character will be at the correct size. And also, because here have something to show, then you got the real wider screen. It's not being cut. So in other words, a character designed for Mugen 1.1 can do 16:9 or 4:3 auto adaptive. But a character for older Mugen, there's no way for it to adapt the screen ratio, because for older Mugen character, they have no way to know the current screen ratio. Before we move on to the coding part, let me introduce you two sets of important triggers only available in 1.0 or 1.1, and 1.0 only have game height and game width. So for 1.1, also they both have game height, game width, and another one is the screen height, screen width. So actually this tutorial we will use screen width. So I will use a demo to show what's the difference between these two. Okay, welcome back to the coding parts. So for Saber, I will try to create a power gauge. I will say create a helper under these -3 states. and when it's not a helper, it's the root, and don't have this power gauge yet, and it's fighting, which is round state is 2. If it's 3, then it's already winning or losing. So for this part, I will not use this complicated one. I will just say maybe game time, which the time is not 0. And the state we will run is 8500, and the ID is also 8500. Normal helper, and this is the name of our helper, and it will based on the root player's position, and it will also have this super move time, so it will move regardless it's in a pause or not. And for the X scale and the Y scale is set to 1, because this helper is a helper that is not moving with the stage or moving with the character. It's not moving at all, because this is a power gauge. This is kind of a UI, so it's not moving with the stage and moving with the character. And here is the actual code for this helper, and this is the definition of the helper, which is in air and have no physical properties. And the element for this one is a empty element. Okay, so it is empty. The index and the group is -1, have no control, and it will always turn if the team side 1 is the player 1 side, it will always turn to the right. If it's on player 2 side, it will always turn to the left. And here is a 2 floating variable. So these two, I will have 2 x coordinate and a y coordinate. Okay, so I will give it fy1 and fy2 for x and the y coordinates. And all the explode elements will based on or relative to these 2 coordinates. So if I want to move all the power gauge, so I just need to turn these 2 values, so all the elements will move along. And in the beginning, I will just give a 0 value, and the y coordinate I will give 720, which is the bottom of the screen. And let's create the explode. So the trigger for the explode will be this explode is not being created yet, and the space is screen. And this space is a coordinate system, which if you say stage, and this element will move along with the stage or interact with the players. But if you say it's screen, that means it's not in the same universe of our player. It's on another universe, which is screen. Your screen is static, it will not move. Your camera pane left and right, this thing will not move, totally will not move. And for the position, I will change it a little bit. So I will just say I will use fr1 as the x value, and fr2 as the y value. Unlike other explode, which space is stage and this is screen, so it's not bound to anything. And the scale is 1 by 1, and the remove time is not removed. And here we will set this on top is 1. So if you have on top, that means these elements will be in front of the foreground of the stage, and a spy priority will be ignored here. And we will destroy this gauge helper when the fighter is over, which is for example round state is 4, or the time is really long. And here is a debug. I will show you the 4 triggers, and I will show you the difference between game width and the screen width. Okay, the game is now loaded. Now I'm on a 4x3 classic stage, and let's turn on the debug. And let's see the debug info. You key in Ctrl D multiple times until it's on the gauge helper, and then let's see. And you see the gain width and the screen width in this stage actually is same, and gain height and the screen height also the same, but the height is quite unexpected. It's a 960. Seems Mugen in 4x3 stage is having more space. Actually, the 16x9 is having less space.
食ログではこの辺りに
Okay, now we are on a 16x9 stage. Let's check out the reading of the game height or screen height. You see here is a little bit different now. You see the screen height is 720 and the screen width is 1280. You see when the character is close by, these two reading is same. But if I run far away and have some distance, and if the stage is zoom out, the game height and the game width will change based on the zoom. So that means we cannot use gain height or gain width for our UI stuff. For example, the background image or the power gauge. So our current X value is 0 for both player 1 and player 2. So you see only have one power gauge at the very left side. And the Y is 720, so it's also on the bottom. So here we will give something a condition. So if the team side is 1, which is player 1 side, we give it 0 on the X, or else we give 1280, which is player 2 side. And now you see here is correct now. So the power gauge is at the bottom and the player 2 is at the right side. But when you go to a 4x3 stage, you see clearly it's not right, because on this 4x3 stage for Saber, the y-axis actually have 960 pixels, but the power gauge is at 720 pixel. So for here we cannot hard code. We say it's 720. We should use a variable. And this variable will be using screen height. And basically, if you are on a 16x9 stage, the screen height will return 720. And if you are under a 4x3 stage, this will return 960. And based on this one, we minus 50. And this 50 will have another function with it. It's called a constant 720p. So basically, if we use this gauge on a low resolution character, it will adjust accordingly. So now we see it's correct. So we have 50 at the bottom, and the above the 50 it's the power gauge. And now we check on the 16x9 stage is also correct. So the bottom have some space, and then we have this power gauge. And then we will also do the same for the x-axis. And then we will say it's a screen width. So for player 2 side is screen width, which is 1280, and the player 1 side it will be 0. And for x-axis, we will also give some space. For player 1 side, we will add 100 pixels. For player 2 side, we will subtract 100 pixels based on the screen width. And here is the result. And we will add this text to the power gauge. For player 1, it will be in front of the power gauge. For player 2, it will be after the power gauge. So let's copy this part and paste. And of course, we can just change the number. So the number will be 6. And for the position, we can have our base X value and plus if it's player 1 side, we can add or maybe subtract 50 pixels. And for the player 2 side, we add 50 pixels. And here is it, but it's a little bit too far. Or maybe 20 is enough. Okay, now it's correct for player 1, but not for player 2. The player 2 is flipped since player 2 is facing opposite direction. So we can change the value on facing to 1. So force player 1 and the player 2 facing the same direction.
Fight.
Now it's correct. So since this power gauge space is not stage but screen, so no matter we zoom in, zoom out, move left and right, it's always be the same. It will not move at all.
食ログではこの辺りに。
And on 4x3 stage, it's also work correctly. It will not be misaligned. And now we can copy and paste and change the enemy number for the power bar. Okay, great. But you saw the power bar is flashing is because this power bar contains 3 sets of powerlet. So the default one is blue. And I know there is another color which is red. And also have another color which is yellow. Corresponding powerlet will be 0, 1, and 2. So we can add one more line, which is the remap power, and the number is this one, and the index is 0. And 0 will be pure blue. And if we need, we can turn this blue power bar into red or yellow, changing the power number. And check on this 16:9 stage, and with zoom also work perfectly. And I have another way to set up this base X, Y, and coordinate. So it's based on percentage. So basically, for example here, I say for player 1 side, the X coordinate will be 10%, which is gain width multiply 0.1. And for player 2 side, it will be 90% of the gain width, which is multiplied by 0.9. So it also works without any issue. And for the Y coordinate, you can do the same. Here I use 95% of the screen height.
Fight. And for next one will be the background image for those supers or something like that. And here is an example 720p background image, and our character is a 720p character, and we can put the character into a 720p stage. It should be a perfect match. And before that, I highly suggest you go to Mugen data and check your mugen.cfg. So in the video section, and find this keep aspect ratio and make sure it's set to 1, and also make sure that something called the stage fit and system fit also set to 1. So if these three parameters is not set to 1, there's a very high chance your Mugen engine will stretch or distort your image, and later you will use your code to distort or stretch your image again, so the saturation will be very messy. So here I created a new Explorer for this background image and add an additional trigger, and says if I detect my parent, which is Saber herself, press the command Z, and I will create this Explorer. And for the position part, I will not using the XY coordinate for the power gauge, but put it into the middle of the screen. For middle of the screen, you will say it's 50% of the screen width and 50% of the screen height. So basically you multiply by 0.5. And for remove time, I will maybe 120, say 120 tick. So basically it's 2 seconds. And scale will be still 1. And others I will comment out on top, because this is a background image, it should not be on top, and the spy priority will be -1. I hope it will behind my character. And if I press the Z button, the image is shown, and it's cover the full screen. But on a 4:3 stage, it will not. So our solution can be, for example, stretch the Y axis, but for the X axis remain the same. So here is a little math trick we can do on the Y coordinates. So the scale of the Y is currently just 1.0, which is 100%. But we can add this part. For example, we can have this parenthesis and saying 1.7778 and divide by another parenthesis, and inside we will have screen width divided by screen height, which calculate the current screen ratio. And for the first number, which is 1.778, this number represent our picture's designed or desired screen ratio, and it will divide by the actual screen ratio. So if you are under a 16:9 stage, it will be 1.778 divided by 1.778. The result will be 1, and 1.0 multiplied by 1 is still 1. So under a 16:9 stage, our picture will not be scaled, will not be stretched. But if the screen ratio changed, for example, changed to 4:3, and the actor will actually be stretched. And here is the result for our background image under 4:3 stage. If you don't care about the corners, for example, you don't care, you cannot see those numbers at the corner of the picture, then you can do the same for the x-axis. Then your aspect ratio will be preserved. And you go back to your 16:9 stage and check your result. It should also have no issue. And okay, this is it. I will show you something interesting, that I increase my character's X and Y scale. by
食録ではこの辺りに
2, you see only the character is got scaled up. The background image is remain the same, the power gauge is remain the same, the portrait remain the same, only the character is being scaled up. Or even I dramatically scale it down, and it will be just okay, right? Even I change my local coordinate to 1080p level, so it may affect the portrait, but your
視力を
power
尽くしてくるがいい
your power gauge will still be okay because it's based on percentage.
でやはっ
But the background image and the portrait will all be halved, and then nothing we can do about that unless you go to your code and change your base scale from 1.0 to 2.0. Okay, let me change back all the parameters and hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you find my tutorial is useful and informative, please subscribe to my channel.